Good night, Mummy.
When Stella peeked into her daughter's room, the truth hit her like lightning. Her daughter was in a maid arms, calling her mummy.
Stella was a woman everyone admired. She was strong, smart, and successful. She owned one of the biggest fashion companies in the city. People called her Madam No Nonsense. Every morning before the sun came out, Stella was already up, high heels clicking on the marble floor, phone in her hand, giving instructions like a boss. Her husband Victor used to smile with pride when he watched her leave. But these days that smile was gone. Dinner was always cold, the bed was always empty, and the house felt more like a hotel than a home. When Victor tried to talk, Stella would wave her hand and say,
"Please, not now. I have a business trip tomorrow."
When he reached for her, she'd sigh and turn away.
Victor.
"I'm tired, Victor. Maybe later." Their little daughter Treasure spent most of her time with the housemaid Kemi. Kemi was quiet and humble. She took care of Treasure like her own child, bathing her, feeding her, even teaching her small songs before bed. Sometimes Kemi would glance at Victor sitting alone at the table, untouched food, his face hard, his eyes distant. He never complained, but his silence was louder than any cry. One evening, Victor prepared a small dinner. He had planned to surprise Stella. It was their wedding anniversary. But while he waited, his phone rang. "Victor," Stella's voice said, calm but cold. "I won't make it home tonight. I have a meeting in Dubai tomorrow morning." The line went dead. Victor looked at the empty chair across from him and slowly pushed away his plate. From the kitchen doorway, Kemi stood watching, and for the first time she saw a proud man quietly breaking inside. The next morning, Victor sat at the table, staring at his untouched breakfast. Kemi moved quietly around him, clearing the plates, trying not to disturb him. Treasure sat beside her, humming a song as she played with her doll. Every day felt the same. Stella was always gone. Meetings, flights, parties. The house was big and beautiful, yet empty. Kemi could see the sadness on Victory's face, though he tried to hide it. He always looked strong, but his eyes told another story. She felt sorry for him, and for little Treasure, who missed her mother's hugs. One evening, as the rain poured heavily outside, Kemi brought dinner to the table.
"Sir, your food is ready."
Thank you, Kemi. You can go rest.
"Sir, please, you should eat something. You've not eaten since morning."
Tell me, Kemi, do you think it's wrong for a man to want his wife's attention?
"No, sir, a home needs love, not just money."
Her words stayed in the air, heavy and true. Victor didn't reply. He simply picked up his spoon and began to eat slowly. For the first time in weeks, someone had spoken to him with kindness. Someone noticed his silence. Someone cared. A man can survive hunger, but not the kind that comes from an empty heart. That night, as Kemi cleared the table, Victory quietly said,
Thank you, Kemi. It's been long since someone reminded me I still matter.
She froze, unsure how to reply. Days turned into weeks and the silence in the house grew deeper. Victor still went to work every morning, still came home every night, but the laughter that once filled the walls was gone. Kemi did her best to keep things normal. She cooked, cleaned, and cared for Treasure like always. The little girl followed her everywhere, tiny feet pattering across the tiles, calling Mummy, Mummy, with a bright smile. Treasure had called Kemi Mummy since she could talk. She didn't know any other mother. From the day she was born, it was Kemi who carried her, bathed her, sang to her, and watched her first steps. And Stella, her real mother, was always busy. Work first, family later. Every night, it was Kemi who tucked Treasure into bed. Every morning, it was her voice the child woke up to. Victor noticed it all, but he said nothing. And he knew the truth was simple and painful. Kemi was raising his child while his wife was raising her business. That evening, when Victor came home from work, he paused at the door. He saw Kemi feeding Treasure, laughing softly as the child tried to feed her back. For a moment, Victor just watched. The scene was peaceful, but it broke something inside him. This was what a family should look like, and he was only a visitor in it. Later that night, Kemi turned off the lights in the living room. Victor sat alone in the dark, listening to the quiet sound of rain outside. He whispered to himself,
How long can a man live in his own house and still feel alone?
Sometimes Stella came home early, but even when she was home, she was never really there. She would walk in, drop her handbag on the couch, open her laptop, and go straight into work mode. Emails, video calls, late night messages. It never stopped. Victor tried to be patient. He would sit beside her, waiting, hoping she'd look at him and ask how his day went. But Stella only talked about clients, deadlines, and deals.
Babe, you won't believe what the board said today.
She would start, eyes still on her screen. Victor would nod quietly, not because he cared about the board, but because he missed her voice. When he tried to draw her close, she'd pull away gently. Honey, please, not tonight.
Honey, please, not tonight.
And when he insisted, she'd whisper.
Oh, baby, I'm tired.
I know.
It became a routine. Love requests denied by exhaustion. Even Treasure, their little girl, barely knew her mother's touch. Stella worked in her home office most nights, while Kemi handled everything. Feeding, bathing, and singing the child to sleep. From the baby's first word to her first steps, Stella missed them all. Victor often stood at the door watching Stella type away with tired eyes. He wanted to talk, but he no longer knew what to say. One night, he finally spoke.
Stella, when was the last time we just talked? Like husband and wife?
Please, Victor, not now. This client is from America, time zone difference.
Do you remember the last time we ate dinner together?
No, I don't.
Neither do I.
The words fell into the room like a stone in still water. For the first time, Stella briefly looked up, but by then, Victor had already turned away. Sometimes success feels powerful, until you realize no one's left to share it with. Victor turned and walked away quietly. But as he passed Kemi in the hallway, he said in a low voice, At least when you talk, someone listens. Kemi stood frozen. She didn't know if that was a compliment or a cry for help. That Friday night, the rain refused to stop. Lightning flashed across the sky as the wind howled through the compound. Inside the house, everything was quiet, except for the soft hum of Stella's laptop. She sat in bed, typing fast, her eyes glued to the screen. Victor leaned against the wall, watching her.
Stella, come to bed. It's almost midnight.
Honey, please, I just need to finish this presentation. I'll sleep soon.
Every night it's work, work, work.
What did you say?
Nothing. Good night.
He lay down, staring at the ceiling. The rain grew louder. The room was cold, not because of the weather, but because love had left it. An hour later, Victory opened his eyes. The laptop light was still shining on Stella's face. She had fallen asleep, but not beside him. She was sitting up, her computer still open, her phone buzzing. He turned his head toward her and whispered sadly.
Even when you're here, you're far away.
Down the hall, Kemi was awake too. She was checking on Treasure, who had cried because of the thunder. After calming the child, Kemi came out to the corridor and saw Victor sitting in the living room, alone, staring at the dark window as rain slammed against the glass. He looked tired, not of work, but of being forgotten. Kemi stepped closer. She hesitated, then spoke softly.
Sir, are you okay?
Fine. Just can't sleep.
Sometimes sleep doesn't come when the heart is heavy.
Do you know what hurts the most? Living with someone who doesn't see you anymore.
Madam works very hard.
Yes, she works very hard. But sometimes I wonder if she still remembers she has a husband and a child.
Kemi didn't know what to say. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Only the rain filled the silence. Their eyes met for a brief moment. The air was thick with silence, not romance, just pain and understanding. Victor looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, he saw not just a maid, but the woman who had been keeping his home alive. Kemi whispered, "Sir, you should rest." He gave a slow nod, but his voice trembled. "Kemi, I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You shouldn't have to see me like this." "Sir," she replied gently, "it's all right. Everyone needs someone sometimes." Then suddenly, a loud thunder cracked across the sky. The lights went out, and the house, fell into darkness. In that darkness, a line was crossed, one that would change every life in that house forever. The next morning, the air in the house felt different. The rain had stopped, but the silence was heavy, heavier than before. Kemi moved around the kitchen trying to act normal. Her hands shook slightly as she washed the dishes. Every sound, every clink of a plate made her heart race. She tried not to think about the night before. It wasn't planned, it wasn't expected. But it happened. Victor had been weak. She had been kind. Loneliness and comfort had met in the dark, and now daylight made everything feel too real. When Victor walked into the kitchen, Kemi froze. "Good morning, sir," she said quietly, not meeting his eyes. He nodded. "Morning." They didn't talk about it. They couldn't. When their hands brushed as she passed him his coffee, both pulled away quickly. The air between them was full of words that would never be spoken. That evening, Stella came home from another meeting. She looked tired, but still had her laptop bag in one hand and her phone in the other. "Victor," she said flatly, "did you confirm my flight for Monday?" "Yes," he replied shortly. No hug, no smile, no warmth. Kemi watched from the corridor, guilt burning inside her chest. Every time Stella passed her, she felt the walls closing in. She didn't want to take anyone's place, but somehow she already had. Days turned into weeks. They both tried to pretend nothing happened. But sometimes, when the nights were long and the house was quiet, the same mistake happened again. And again. She didn't mean to fall, but kindness can be dangerous when the heart is lonely. Kemi lay awake one night, staring at the ceiling, whispering to herself,
Is this love or loneliness?
Stella returned home from another business trip. Her car stopped at the gate just as the sun was setting. From outside, she could hear laughter, the kind of laughter she hadn't heard in a long time. She walked in with her handbag on one shoulder and her phone in her hand, still talking about clients even as she entered her own house. "Yes, Mr. Johnson, I'll check the file tonight," she said. "No, the meeting can't wait till Monday." But when she stepped into the living room, her voice stopped. There was Kemi, sitting on the floor with Treasure, both of them laughing as they built a tower of blocks. And Victor was standing by the wall, smiling quietly at the scene. For a brief moment, the house felt alive. Warm, happy, whole, but Stella was not part of that picture. Kemi quickly stood up when she noticed her. Welcome,
Ma.
Ma, she said respectfully, picking up Treasure. Stella nodded stiffly. Thank you. You can take her to her room. Kemi carried the child away, her heartbeat racing. Stella turned to Victor. You look happy, she said with a small, sarcastic smile. Victor didn't answer. He only said, At least someone's laughing in this house. She frowned, dropped her bag on the table and opened her laptop. Work was easier than feelings. Later that night, Stella was in bed, typing away as usual. The soft sound of rain tapped on the windows. Then, from down the hallway, she heard her daughter's small voice. Good night, Mummy, Treasure said softly. Stella froze. She didn't smile. She didn't even move. Because deep down, she knew that Mummy was not meant for her. Her hands began to shake on the keyboard. Who was Treasure talking to? Stella stood up and walked to the hallway, her heart beating fast. When she peeked into her daughter's room, the truth hit her like lightning. Treasure was in Kemi's arms, hugging her tightly and whispering, Good night, Mummy. Stella stood in the doorway, frozen, watching another woman hold her child and hearing her own daughter call that woman Mummy. Stella didn't move. She stood in the doorway, frozen, watching the scene she never thought she would see. Her little girl, her own daughter, was wrapped tightly in another woman's arms. And the word Mummy had found a new owner. Kemi didn't see her standing there. She was smiling gently, humming a lullaby while stroking Treasure's hair. The child yawned, snuggled closer and whispered, Mummy, don't go. Stella's eyes filled with tears, but her pride refused to let them fall. She quietly turned and walked back to her room. Victor looked up as she entered.
You're still awake?
I just saw my daughter calling someone else Mummy. Tell me, Victor, when did I become a stranger in my own home?
Stella, don't start this tonight.
No, answer me. Why does my child call my maid mummy? Why does she run to her, not to me?
Don't act like you don't know why, Stella.
You changed, Victor.
No, Stella, you changed. You left this house a long time ago, even when you were still living in it.
The room went quiet. Only the sound of rain filled the space between them. Kemi stood in the hallway, frozen in guilt. She had heard every word. Stella turned toward the doorway and saw Kemi standing there, tears in her eyes. Her voice dropped to a whisper that carried more pain than anger. "Thank you, Kemi." The next morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Stella walked down the stairs, dressed for work, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Her phone was in one hand, her car keys in the other. But then she stopped. In the living room, Victory and Kemi stood too close, too tense. Their voices dropped the moment they noticed her. Something wasn't right. Stella's eyes narrowed slightly. Slowly, she stepped closer. "Kemi, I pay you to take care of my child. And while I was gone, you took care of my husband too, didn't you? You can build a mansion, but if love doesn't live there, it's still empty." For a long moment, no one spoke. The air in the room was heavy, filled with guilt, fear, and heartbreak. Kemi stood frozen at the door, her eyes wet with tears. Stella's words cut through her like a blade. "Answer me, Kemi," Stella said quietly, but her voice shook with anger. "You took care of my husband too, didn't you?" Kemi fell to her knees, trembling. "Ma, please," she began, her voice breaking. "I never planned it. I swear before God I never meant for anything to happen." Stella's lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked at Victor, her husband, the man she had built a life with. "Victor," she said softly, "tell me she's lying." Victor couldn't look at her. His eyes stayed on the floor. That silence was her answer. Her knees felt weak. She held the edge of the table to steady herself. "So it's true," she whispered. "You brought shame into my home while I was out there building a future for us." Victor finally spoke, his voice rough and tired. "Stella, I didn't plan it either. I was lonely. You were never here. You gave your time, your mind, your love to your work, not to us." Stella's anger broke into a painful laugh. "So this is my punishment? Or because I worked hard? Because I built something for our family?" He shook his head slowly. "No, Stella, because while you were building your empire, your home was falling apart." Kemi sobbed quietly, her face buried in her hands. Stella's heart cracked in two. Tears finally falling down her face, she faced Kemi again. Her voice was sharp but broken. "You are leaving this house today. Pack your things and get out of my house. Before I do something I will regret." Kemi shook her head, crying harder. "Ma, please, I have nowhere to go." "I'm pregnant with his child," Kemi whispered through her tears. For a few seconds, till no one breathed, Stella just stared, eyes wide, lips trembling, trying to process the words she had just heard. Kemi's voice still echoed in the room like a ghost. "I'm pregnant. With his child." The sound of rain outside grew louder, almost like the heavens were crying with her. Stella took one slow step forward, then another. Her heels clicked on the marble floor like gunshots. When she finally stood in front of Kemi, her voice came out as a whisper, cold, broken, and dangerous. "Say that again." Kemi's hands shook as she knelt on the floor, her head bowed. "Ma, please, I didn't mean for it to happen. I swear I tried to stop it, but that night..." Stella raised her hand sharply. "Stop, don't you dare call me Ma!" Her eyes darted to Victor, her husband, the man who once promised her forever. He couldn't even meet her gaze. That silence was his confession. Stella laughed, not out of humor but disbelief. It was the kind of laughter that sounds like pain wearing a mask. "So, while I was flying across the world, fighting for this family's future, you were here, building another one behind my back." Victor stood up slowly. His voice was low, filled with shame. "Stella, please. It wasn't supposed to happen. I was lonely. She cut him off. Lonely? You think you're the only one who gets lonely? You think success protects me from pain? Her voice cracked. I was doing all this for us, Victor? Tears finally spilled down her face, but she didn't wipe them. She pointed at Kemi, her voice trembling. And you. You were supposed to help me, not replace me. Kemi sobbed harder. Ma, please. Forgive me. I never wanted to take your place. Stella stared at her for a long moment, then whispered, But you did. A tense silence filled the house. Even little Treasure, who had wandered into the hallway, could feel the storm in the air. Stella turned slowly to her husband. Her voice was calm now, too calm. You made your choice, Victor. You didn't just break our vow. You broke me. Victor reached out, desperate. Stella? But she stepped back. Don't touch me. Soft pause. Rain fades to silence. She wiped her tears, straightened her shoulders, and said the words that closed the door on everything they once had. Kemi stays here, not because I forgive you, but because I want you both to remember what betrayal feels like when the light comes back in the morning. She walked away, all leaving Victor and Kemi in the dark, both broken, both guilty, both trapped in the ruins of what once was a home. And as she walked past Victor, she said the words that would change everything. You wanted a home, Victor. Now you can keep the one you chose. Morning came, but it didn't bring peace. The storm outside had stopped, yet inside the house the storm still raged, silent, painful, and real. Stella stood by the window, watching the sunrise through tired eyes. She hadn't slept. Her heart was too heavy for rest. On the table beside her sat 2 suitcases, one small, one large. She had made up her mind. It was time to go. Downstairs, Victor sat alone on the couch, his head in his hands. Kemi was in the kitchen, quietly feeding Treasure. No one spoke. Even the air felt afraid to move. Treasure's little voice broke the silence. Mummy, where are we going today? She asked sweetly, looking up at Kemi. Stella, standing on the stairs, froze. That one word, Mummy, hit her like a knife again. Her own child still didn't know who her real mother was. Kemi's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to correct the child, but she couldn't speak. How do you fix a name that has already found a home in a child's heart? Stella walked down slowly, dragging her suitcase. Victor stood up quickly. Stella, please, he said, his voice shaking. Don't do this. We can fix it. I can fix it. She looked at him, calm, cold, empty. No, Victor. You can't fix what you broke inside me. Stella smiled through her tears. She knelt, opened her arms, and held her daughter tightly. Yes, baby. Mummy is here, she whispered. Treasure giggled, her small hands touching Stella's face. But then she turned her head, looking back at Kemi. Mummy, come too, she said innocently. The words hit Stella like thunder. Her arms froze around the child. She realized Treasure wasn't calling her mummy. Kemi dropped the spoon in shock, and Victor's eyes closed. He couldn't bear to watch. Stella forced a shaky smile. No, baby. Mummy is taking you with her, she said softly, lifting Treasure into her arms. But the little girl began to cry, kicking and reaching out toward Kemi. Mummy, I want Mummy, she sobbed loudly, stretching her hands toward the maid. Stella's heart shattered. She tried to hold on, but Treasure's cries grew louder, her tiny fists pounding Stella's chest. In defeat, Stella slowly set her down. The moment Treasure ran back into Kemi's arms, Stella felt the full weight of what she had lost. Her daughter clung tightly to the maid's neck, tears still on her cheeks. Kemi stood frozen, crying too. Madam, please, she whispered. I never wanted this. Stella nodded weakly, her voice breaking. I know, but it's my fault. I gave the world my time, and gave my home nothing. She turned to Victor, her eyes hollow, her voice calm. Now I understand. Success means nothing if you lose the people who are supposed to celebrate it with you. She picked up her suitcase and walked to the door. Victor tried to follow, but she raised her hand. "Don't," she whispered. "You've done enough." As the door closed behind her, the echo of her heels faded away, leaving Victor, Kemi, and Treasure in a house that no longer felt like a home. And outside, for the first time in years, Stella cried. Not as a boss, not as a wife, but as a woman who had finally lost everything that truly mattered. Stella now lives alone in a luxury apartment. City view, golden lights, silent rooms. Every corner shines, but nothing feels alive. She has everything she ever worked for, except peace. Her phone sits beside her untouched, the screen dark. At night, she scrolls through old photos. Victor smiling, Treasure laughing, Kemi in the background. Memories that used to make her proud now stab like knives. She presses a photo to her chest and whispers, "I built an empire, but lost my home." Tears fall on her phone as she stares at the screen, a picture of the family she'll never get back. Months later, Stella drives back to her old home with a car full of gifts. Dolls, dresses, sweets. Her hands shake on the steering wheel. When the gate opens, Treasure is playing outside. Stella smiles and calls softly, "Treasure, my baby." But the little girl freezes. Then she hides behind Kemi's dress and whispers, "Mummy, who is that woman?" The words crush Stella's heart more than any insult could. Kemi looks away, speechless. Victor steps out of the house, calm but distant. Stella forces a smile, fighting the tears. "I just came to say hello," she says softly. "Time doesn't heal what you never took care of." As Stella turns to leave, Treasure's laughter follows her. But it's not for her anymore. Months passed before Stella gathered the courage to return. She told herself she only wanted to see her daughter. But deep down, she hoped for something more. Maybe forgiveness. Maybe a second chance. When she arrived, the garden looked different. Flowers blooming, laughter echoing from the backyard. She peeked through the window. Kemi and Victor were sitting side by side, helping Treasure draw on a piece of paper. Treasure giggled and called out, "Daddy! Mummy! Look!" The word mummy stung again, soft, innocent, but sharp as a knife. Kemi turned to Victory and smiled, and he smiled back. For a moment, Stella stood frozen. This was the home she had built, yet it no longer belonged to her. She turned away before they could see her tears. The success she once worshipped now felt meaningless. She had everything the world admired, except the love that made it worth living. Back in her car, Stella caught her reflection in the rearview mirror and whispered, "Was success worth this?" That night, Stella sat by her window, city lights glowing behind her. She finally picked up her camera, not to record a business tip, but a confession. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "I had everything, money, fame, power. But I forgot the one thing success can never replace. Family." She took a deep breath, wiping her tears. "I was so busy proving myself to the world. I didn't see my home falling apart. I gave my husband silence and another woman gave him comfort. I gave my child distance and another woman gave her love." She paused, her voice breaking softly. "If I could start again, I'd choose laughter over meetings, dinner tables over boardrooms, and love over pride. I starved my husband with my absence, and another woman fed him with her presence. In chasing the world, I lost my world. The world knows my name, but my own daughter doesn't." Stella looked at the city lights outside her window and whispered, "The world knows my name, but my own daughter doesn't."